All right, and we are live. This is test run version 0, looking to do our very first dry run on the Catalyst Go outline here. Why is my computer not working? All right, there we go. Technical difficulties, off to a bumpy start, but that's all right. We're just playing around. All right, so what we've got here, this is Catalyst Go. This is the evolution of the guided onboarding experience concept. We started off in Mural with a little bit of structure. We had some success there. We played around with the swarm, going with unstructured. Got some learnings there. Started introducing a little bit of structure into some of those swarm sessions, playing around. But this evolved into what we see here. So a very guided experience where we have everything consolidated into one place. We have this digital space we get to share together. And so not only is this a way to get people together, give a guided introduction to different concepts in Catalyst, but it also has contextually embedded resources so that this is very repeatable, something people can return to and refer to even after the session or dig into during the session. So I'll pause there. Some of this is going to become more apparent as we actually get into it. So what do we do? Overall layout here is it kind of follows, two metaphors I like to use here. We have kind of like a clock where we're starting over here, kind of like in that 9 o'clock area, and then we're going across the circle, ending up in the 3 o'clock area, and then we have this bottom section to wrap us up at the end. Another way that I like to think about this is kind of like the rising and setting of the sun, right? The sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. We have a full day here, and this experience also kind of follows a similar arc where we're kind of just getting ready. We're waking up together, tensions get high, we get right into the thick of it, and then we come in for a gentle, smooth landing. Get to watch that sunset together, reflect, and see what we want to do better for next time. So without further ado, getting into it. So start here. One of the big pain points that we've heard over and over and over again, every time we've shown folks Mural or Miro, had to get them to engage. There are always tons of questions. What do I do? How do I get started? So here we have an attempt to really take care of our new people. So all the way on the left here, we have the outline for the session, know exactly what to expect, what we're going to be covering. What we don't have here yet, that'll be added as we play around with this and get a better sense for it, is going to be timestamps. So I want to let people know exactly what they're going to be here for. No more sitting around for, anywhere from 45 minutes to 3 hours on a Saturday. We're going to have this be very time boxed, very intentional, being very mindful of people's times, making sure this is impactful as possible. We've also got some tips to make sure we're taking care of our new folks. If you're new to digital collaboration, never been in Mural, don't panic. We've got some help here for you. So how do I drive this thing? We've got some tips on navigation. How do I participate and engage? We've got some tips here on how to actually engage with the tool. So adding sticky notes, drawing, using emojis, and more. And then if you're still confused, we've got some great resources here. You can dive into a full Miro tutorial if you'd like. And this video is about 20 minutes, goes really deep. We've also got some resources from actual Miro company themselves, digging deeper into navigation, and then some tips and tricks in their Work Smarter, Not Harder article. And then finally, before we get in here, there's a little community agreement, code of conduct, if you will, for the session. The intent here is to not only allow the opportunity for participants to share their own code of conduct, how they like to engage, how they want to participate, but also to set some boundaries, set some ground rules. And some of the links here are inspiration, part of things that both inspired this little piece here, and also some inspiration for trying to set some of these guidelines together. So we have obviously the code of conduct for the Catalyst community itself, but we've also got some really great guidance coming out of places like Discord, Epic Games, League of Legends, all these thriving online communities that have very robust code of conduct, really great communities. Maybe we can learn something from them. So by participating in this experience, you agree to do some things, and we're all going to agree on that. So then we're getting into it. Welcome to Catalyst Go, your Cardano Catalyst guided onboarding experience. So here we hit on the biggest and most pressing questions. What's Cardano, what's Catalyst, and what's Catalyst Go? Not only do we have a nice, succinct one-liner describing each of these concepts, we also have embedded resources where folks can dig deeper on exactly what these things are. So you want to learn more about Cardano? Go to the Cardano website. want to learn more about Catalyst? We've got the Project Catalyst website. You want to learn more about Catalyst Go? We've got the proposal from Fund 4 linked here. And one thing to call out is that all of these resources are subject to change. I could definitely see an opportunity to replace some of Catalyst or Cardano guidance with guidance from the community. Maybe the Catalyst, Cardano Catalyst.io or the Cardano Catalyst.org, some of these community-driven websites. So two pieces there. So we're answering it with a very succinct, clear definition of what these things are. We've got some further reading for you to dig into on your own after the fact. But then we also have a way for folks to engage with these questions, right? We don't want onboarding can't continue to be this very one-sided, unidirectional affair where we're just educating, informing, indoctrinating might be the kind of extreme negative far end of the spectrum. Rather, what we want to do is we want to open the conversation. These are evolving concepts, and we want to know how these new participants fit into that, not only for themselves, but also for the ecosystem. I think it's great for everybody to have these kind of conversations. We also have some open-ended questions here to encourage some dialogue, allow new participants to really feel ownership over what they're stepping into. And so again, each of these are going to be specific to these big three questions. What's Cardano? What's Catalyst? What's Catalyst Go? So some of the questions we have here to try to engage folks is what positive changes you want to bring about in the world through participation? What do you hope to achieve for yourself, for your community, for yourself? What are you curious about today? And what are you hoping to get out of the session? And so all of this is meant to be a pre-read. This will all be part of a package that gets sent out. Folks will be encouraged to explore this on their own ahead of time. The expectation is we can get at least this far, but encouraged and invited to explore the rest of the board on their own, maybe dig into some of these resources, start to answer some of these questions. But really where things start is going to be in the middle here. So we've got the basic swarm circle outline that was pioneered by Niels and Felix and has continued to be used in the Catalyst swarm. And again, this is where folks are really going to pick it up. So from a facilitator point of view, this is where we're going to be hanging out, and we'll encourage people to hit the getting started, welcome to Catalyst Go on their own, find their way in here. And then we'll circle back through, and as part of the introduction and kickoff for the session, we'll actually briefly review the agenda, getting started, check in with folks on Mural, make sure we're all in agreement on the community, maybe dig into do a brief overview of these high-level topics. What is Cardano, Catalyst Go? Maybe review some of these questions, give an opportunity for folks to share some of the thoughts and aspirations that they put in response to these questions. Like I said, getting into the middle, this is where it really starts. So we'll be encouraging, with the help of the facilitator, encouraging people to take a seat here, much like they do in the Catalyst Swarm and the other Swarm sessions, but with the twist here, where you're not just going to be grabbing a free space, kind of changing color, putting your name, but actually you're going to be choosing a role, and the intent here is twofold. One, it's an attempt to embed directly in here an overview of each of the three roles, give some education, some onboarding, but at the same time, this role that we choose is actually going to help streamline the way that we facilitate the rest of the session. And so nothing is set in stone, and that'll be clearly communicated, but by selecting the role of voter, proposer, community advisor, folks will actually be kind of selecting their role for the exercise, and maybe they want to choose to use a different one after the fact, but really help to make this a real experience and make it engaging and participatory, not just reading documentation, but rather learning Catalyst by doing Catalyst. So again, we'll start off here. We'll take a look at each of the different roles, answer questions. We've got resources for kind of day one engagement, getting into idea scale, watching town halls, joining Discord, browsing the community FAQ, and then actually choosing a role. So like I said, that'll be driving a lot of the session. So all of this is kind of happening in the pre-session, and as we're starting to get situated in the experience together. So once we've had everybody, we've given the overview on the roles, on Catalyst overall, on Cardano, we've gotten to loop back through some of these questions, set expectations, and ground rules together, then we're really going to get into the meat of it. So welcome to Catalyst Go. Moving on to the next section here. Let's solve wicked problems together. So the intent here is really to find alignment. Find alignment on what will actually be talking about, but also finding alignment with others in the community. A little bit of open discussion on these different categories and catalysts to one, inform folks of what the different categories are, where we're all working together, but also to drive some open-ended conversation about which one speaks most to you. Where can you maybe have an opportunity to plug in? Maybe you can meet some like-minded people on this call, find some opportunities for collaboration down the road. But in practice, so that's kind of the background intent and what's underlying this. But in practice, it's going to be a very simple, straightforward exercise to just share these different categories of problems. So the leading question is, what's your passion? So Catalyst brings together experts from all over. We're solving wicked problems. Which one most captures your interest and imagination? So we're actually going to do a little bit of a voting round here. So we're not going to have anybody on the call to vote with us right now, but I'll do it just for the sake of argument here, a little demonstration. So I'm going to change my voting area to include just these fun categories. And now I'll hit start and folks will be invited to vote on which of these options is really speaking to them. So personally, I've been really involved in value onboarding, distributed decision making. I've got 8 votes left. We'll end it there, but can get the feel for it. We're actually going to get to engage and share our thoughts here. And we'll come away with and see what got the most votes. It'll be an interesting way to see, are we aligned on what we're actually finding interesting? So we'll have the initial result, and then we'll actually have a little bit of discussion, some challenging here. So democracy is a great way to help to narrow our choices, but let's make sure that everybody's in the boat. So maybe the majority will land on one particular category, but then any individual will have the opportunity to rather than the group will have the opportunity to vote one more time to challenge or accept. So, this could be an opportunity for a dissenting minority to have their voice heard, share their thoughts, share their thinking, and then to land on a final result. In this scenario, it is a little bit I'd say superfluous, the fact that we're doing this voting, but what this is setting us up for is using this general template, using these patterns, these interactions to actually set us up for additional guided onboarding experiences that are going to mimic the Catalyst process, broken up into chunks and discrete steps. So you might imagine this being a little bit more impactful if we're in the context of, say, collaboratively defining a problem statement or a solution statement. That's where some of these voting things might come into play, and not only in these experiences, but what if we could actually build this into a bot after taking these learnings from the live guided onboarding experiences and made this into an asynchronous bot-driven social game over something like Discord or a different channel. So a bit of a tangent there. I'll move on now, but that's kind of the main section here, is just giving an overview. Now that we've gotten we're progressively zooming in. So we started, what is Cardano? What is Catalyst? What is Catalyst Go? We've gotten our roles. Now we're zooming in a little bit more. We're seeing what are those categories? Where are those places we can actually plug in? Starting to find some alignment, connecting with the community, our team that's on the call with us. And then we're going to move into the main activity for the session. So by collaboratively refining our ideas, working together, we're actually going to kind of learn about the Catalyst process. One thing that I'll share here before I actually get into the activity, the thing that sparked this is, despite being around Catalyst for a few months, being in the onboarding space, being all over trying to track down documentation, learn as much as I can, I didn't really understand Catalyst until I had gone through an entire funding lifecycle. And so the attempt here is to have people role play an entire funding lifecycle to condense that time from 6 to 8 weeks down into an hour together. And obviously there's going to be gaps, there's going to be questions, they're drinking from the fire hose, but the goal here is to kind of just expose all those different ideas, set that template and that structure in the back of their minds. And even if it's not totally solidified day one, as they move through the process, they're going to have a much better understanding of that context, how they fit in, and those learnings will start to solidify as they actually put them into practice. But this is that first interactive way that they're actually engaging with the Catalyst process. So we have this top section broken out by each of the stages in the fund lifecycle. So first, we've got the introduction describing the objective, showing all of the different stages in the fund. We'll give a brief overview here, and then move into the next section. So a quick note on just how these boxes are laid out. So we've got the stage as the title. We've got a rough time estimate just to keep us engaged and moving along quickly. Again, trying to time box these, be very mindful of time and be as impactful as we can in as short of a time as we can. So being both efficient and impactful, having lots of quality. And then down at the bottom, we have the different roles. So we go beyond the trichotomy of voter, advisor, proposer, and here we will actually be expanding on some of those different roles that you might play within the community that aren't necessarily recognized in an official capacity. So this is highlighting ways that someone new maybe isn't super comfortable getting into the proposal process, but wants to contribute. They can come in, they could be a moderator, a content creator, translator, mentor, any of these things. And so we're just putting that idea in their head that, hey, there are other ways to engage and support this process outside of the core three. We will be focused on the core three, but drawing attention to those so that people can feel empowered and inspired, motivated to get in and involved day one, regardless of where they might be in their own journey. So with that, kind of getting into the activity. So insight sharing, we've got we've got screenshots from one of the fun challenges showing some insight sharing. So we'll just give a very brief overview here of the stage, say what it is, what we're doing. Here's a visual. Any questions? We might do a little bit of, we'll do some role playing here. Oh boy. All right, yeah, dry run, test run, cool. So insight sharing. So we're actually going to be adding sticky notes here and engaging. So share insightful ideas, observations, and data points to help inform proposals. So the prompt here is, what are some problems or challenges you've encountered in Catalyst so far? So participants are going to be invited to drop some sticky notes, share their thoughts, ask questions. Is this in the right direction? Is this an insight? What am I doing? Really digging into it, but being mindful of time, trying to move it along as quickly as we can. Then moving on to proposals, we've got an outline of what makes a good proposal. We have a screenshot of how things are laid out in idea scale. We call out that this is mainly for proposers, but we have community advisors and voters getting involved, dropping comments in idea scale. We've also got this call, you can't be a community advisor in the same fund that you submitted a proposal, so reflect on that and decide how you'd like to engage during the next fund. So this will be where whoever had selected the role of proposer in our very first circle back in the middle as we were getting situated together, did you take the proposer role? So the proposers will be invited to drop in a problem and a solution that they could possibly address some of the insights. So it's going to be very light, very light touch, very basic. But again, we're just trying to get that practice. And so we'll invite the proposers, take a minute or two, drop some ideas in here. What are some problems or solutions? In the next screen, we'll talk about refining. So this is a very widely engaged part where we've got those initial ideas out there. We're trying to reflect and refine, give some constructive feedback. Here we might invite some of, we won't actually have anybody do anything outside of kind of the core role places. So these will be questions, but we won't have anybody doing anything in these middle parts. We'll more just kind of describe it. So we're finalizing, maybe we took those ideas, we're making them a little bit better, then we're finalizing based on the comments, feedback we're getting. Then we'll get into the assessments. We've got the call out here, can't be a proposer and a CA. We've got the criteria. We've got links to CA tools. We might talk about rewards. We've got an FAQ for further reading. Get into a little bit, what are some basic questions we have about being a CA, about making our first assessment. Then sharing the assess QA. So I think it's important that CAs know how they're being assessed. How is this being rated? What's the standards they're being held to? So making sure that we're sharing that, sharing the red yellow card, and any other documentation that's going to be helpful for CAs to really understand what that process looks like. And then finally, governance. So we'll have some guidance here around voting. What are best practices? How do you vote? How does voting work? All that good stuff. And like all the other sections, having documentation for further reading. And then at this point, we'll be kind of taking stock to say, are there other ways to contribute? Of course, yes, it's all about our collective genius. Play your superpowers. If you don't see a path, blaze the trail for others. So encouraging people to take on not only those roles that we show here is kind of falling outside those three core roles, but if that's not your jam, carve your own role out here. There's absolutely room for that. And then to encourage some reflection, we'll actually ask, what are those unique skills that you'd like to flex and grow while participating in Catalyst? And then finally, kind of wrapping up with any lingering questions. This isn't meant to be comprehensive, but want to give that solid foundation. What lingering questions are there? Where are we still wondering things? We can connect on all of these things. And that's where we're really wrapping up the core onboarding piece. But I think it's really important that we still have this other section. So helping each other level up along the way. So this is kind of reflecting at the end of our session together to now think about, what do I do next? Where do I go from here? So this is where we actually think about that triaging, motivating day one action, and starting to build our own native teams within Catalyst. So can I join an existing project? Absolutely. Who are you looking for? We'll also include some information around partner projects, places you can plug in and get involved. We'll have a bounty board, things both from our perspective and from partner perspectives. Um, just a couple things that I know are going to be coming up for Catalyst Go are going to be, finding facilitators, translating. Can we start to get this into different languages? Those might be, some examples of bounties. Can anyone help me? Maybe you're trying to build your own thing. So what are you looking for? And then sharing some information about community events. Community events are a great way to kind of stay connected with what's going on, meet other people, find collaborators, and invite people in the boat. Share that vision, share that idea, and see if anybody wants to raise their hand and come join your team. And then finally, what now? So what do we do now? How do we start building the future in Cardano and Catalyst? So here our final kind of exploratory open-ended question is, how will you participate in the next 3 days? What does success look like for you in the next 30 days? So really one final reflection on, what are you actually going to do with all this information? How are you going to get involved? What are you committing to? And what do you really want to get out of this after some sustained time, 30 days from now? What does that look like for you? And then to help facilitate that journey, also including wrapping this thing up with more learning resources. So everything here has been very onboarding focused, curated for that purpose. So here we might include some different curated things. So maybe one idea is AdaGov. They've done an excellent job of curating a bunch of learning resources and learning paths on the AdaGov Miro board. I'd love to link to there. Things like the community landing page, etc. Just other things that might help people on their journey really getting involved in the Catalyst ecosystem. We'll share additional links there. And that'll be the end of the core session. So at this point, we'll thank participants for coming, but also ask that they'd also stick around for a little bit of feedback. But they are invited to run at this time. Feedback is going to be entirely opt-in and voluntary. But one thing kind of keeping people sticking around is going to be these epoch rewards. We'll get into that in a second. So first, how was your experience? We're going to be gauging experience and outcomes across 4 dimensions. So the experience, how did this go for you? Did you actually enjoy your time? Was the experience positive and enjoyable? So outcomes, our goal here is to provide onboarding guidance. Do you actually feel better prepared to participate in Catalyst? Did we accomplish that objective? Think about collaboration, this group setting. Underlying a lot of this is a hypothesis that group settings can help to accelerate learning and accelerate towards outcomes in certain situations. And so did this team setting actually help you? Give us some feedback on that hypothesis. How was the team? Did you benefit from this setting? Are we getting that collective genius unleashed, or would you prefer to have done all this by yourself? And then finally, guidance. How'd the facilitator do? Did they do a good job of guiding you through your experience? And the intent here is to not only help with feedback for the facilitator, ensure that we're maintaining very high standards for delivery of this experience, but also, I think that's it. I forgot where I was going. Pause there. And then, like we have throughout the rest of the experience, we also have some open-ended questions to invite reflection and deeper feedback. So some more open-ended questions about, what did you like? What was frustrating or confusing? What specifically can we do to improve and better achieve our onboarding objective? Maybe were there certain conditions under which you prefer to collaborate? Not everybody loves to collaborate. Not everybody wants to collaborate all the time. So maybe give us some insight there. And then finally, some very tactical feedback for our facilitator. What should they keep doing, and what can they improve upon? So this is going to be a debrief for the participants. It's going to help the facilitators improve. It's going to help the architects continue to improve this experience design, and then also demonstrate value, demonstrate progress to Catalyst community and all the other stakeholders. So this piece, very important, but again, going to be 100% opt-in voluntary. We are not collecting any personal information. As you can see, this is going to be 100% aggregate anonymous data. So the next piece, epoch rewards. So a few things here. We're kind of keeping our hooks in our participants, so nobody is required to provide feedback, but if you want to get some rewards for participating today, you are going to have to stick around for the feedback. And so one very tactical aspect of this is kind of getting people to stick around for their rewards so they can give us feedback. But it goes a lot deeper than that. This is really an attempt to start playing around with different governance structures. How can we start to introduce some very light touch, very low complexity frameworks that can be extensible, can be modifiable, but can help provide some guide rails for how a distributed organization might be run, rewarded, compensated. And here's an attempt to start to define perhaps one way of doing this. So we've kind of broken out the contributions and the value being delivered from these experiences into three parts. So we have the architects, the people actually building this thing, who are burning the midnight oil, putting it together, doing the research, doing the actual designing, the architecture, putting this thing together, making it happen behind the scenes. Then we have the facilitators, kind of the hosts, the stewards for the actual time and space of the experience itself. Absolutely critical to the delivery of what the architects have built. It doesn't matter if you have the best product in the world if nobody's going to see it. And so facilitators are a key part of the delivery of this experience. Then finally, participants. Like the wisdom of the Grateful Dead tells us, when it's really happening, the audience is as much of the value creation and the experience as the band, or in this case, as the experience creators or facilitators. And so we want to make sure that we are rewarding participants. We think that onboarding is going to deliver value, and so we want to incentivize people to participate, to be able to add that value. But also, we want to make sure that we're rewarding their time. We think that as a result of some of these experiences, we're going to have a lot of value add in Catalyst. People are going to be participating, dedicating their time and attention. Again, that needs to be rewarded. We cannot have foundations for this whole ecosystem be built on extraction, but rather on collaborative compensation and rewarding of each other. So again, that kind of three layer structures is underlying this outline here. So what's going to happen here is actually participants are going to be invited to, to back up one more time. So we have the three different roles, and then we actually have how the treasury is governed at a very high level. So we have the treasury itself, and then we also have a sustainability factor, and the total treasury amount divided by the sustainability factor gives the epoch rewards. What's a concrete example of that? So we have $3,000 allocated in our budget for the guided onboarding experience to reward participants. That's $500 over the course of 6 weeks. And so if we say that our treasury amount is $3,000, our sustainability factor is 6, then that implies that our epoch rewards defined by 1 week are going to be $500 per epoch per week. So pretty simple example here, but we might extrapolate that out to a much bigger example where maybe we have a $10 million treasury and we have a sustainability factor of we want to ensure that we always have enough to put on experiences for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 10 years, right? And so by playing around with that treasury, that sustainability factor, we have sustainability built right into the protocol. If the treasury is not being replenished to replace the funds that are being dispersed each week, those epoch rewards are going to slowly diminish over time until they become so trivial that perhaps the ecosystem doesn't want to nobody actually wants to participate. So there's kind of some self-healing aspects built in here of how this helps to balance things. And then what's actually going to happen in the session is participants, along with the facilitator, will vote for who's actually how are those rewards going to be split. So the balanced recommended split is that for the epoch reward, it's an even split, 1/3 to the architect, 1/3 to facilitator, 1/3 to the participant, with the assumption that every one of those groups may be made up by one or more people. So early on, likely to be a single architect, a single facilitator, maybe a handful of participants, but as this grows, as this matures, as we start to have apprenticeships and training, architects might be a group or a pool of architects actually working on this who would then split that epoch reward. Facilitator, one very concrete example, we've shared that we want to train facilitators to be able to deliver this on an ongoing basis. If I am training a facilitator, I have an apprentice with me, then that 1/3 would be split between two people. That's kind of the balance, the recommended. This is the one that's going to have the right mix of sustainability, resilience, and gratitude for the folks that are making this happening. But we also, want to leave the flexibility and autonomy for participants to kind of make that choice themselves. So maybe they really love the experience and they want to accelerate design and testing, and we're actually going to allocate more to the architect, take a little bit less for the facilitator and the participant. Or perhaps, we really loved our facilitator. They did an outstanding job of guiding our experience. We really want to support them, accelerate the experience hosting. Maybe we'll give a little bit extra facilitator, a little bit less for architect, less participant. And finally, accelerate team. There might be exceptional scenarios where the people that are brought together in this call vibe so well, have such an outstanding idea that they want to execute on together. We want to empower that, and we don't want to have them be reliant on an 8-week Catalyst funding cycle. And so what we'd like to do is if teams can agree that what they'd like to do is give more incentives to the participants, we're going to give that option. We want to, no barriers. If the team agrees that this is something they will commit to, then they will have that funding. There might be some reporting, some tracking required and attached to that, similar to what the Catalyst cohort is held to. But we want to make that as frictionless as possible, really help to accelerate people. It's not going to be a lot of money, but could be enough to help to kickstart a little effort, and that's exactly what we want to do. So one criticism might be here that this leaves it really open to attack by people. If people wanted to come in here and just drain the treasury by just always allocating everything to participants, that just means that this effort is going to crumble. The experience is not going to continue to develop and mature and improve. Those as a result, if the experience and the hosting and the building are not accelerating or not improving, those epoch rewards are going to get smaller and smaller over time, right? I mentioned that if the total treasury is not being replenished each week to replace the funds that are being dispersed, and as an extension of that, or rather as a corollary, that implies that this ecosystem is not delivering value, right? Because if value is being created, there would be funds flowing in. So there's not being value created because we're allocating all the funds to participants. The rewards at stake for doing that are just going to diminish more and more over time. And not only that, but this is a small self-contained experiment. We're only allocating $500 each week. This is going to be closed at the end of the 6 weeks. This will, be reflected upon. We'll do some takeaways and learnings. There will be no opportunity to access, thousands and thousands of dollars. If you wanted to abuse this system, it's going to be autocratically run, but role-playing, this kind of permissionless type of way of operating. And so very little risk, but a lot of opportunity to learn here. What kind of attack vectors there might be, how might participants actually respond to having this kind of power and influence over treasury disbursements. On the kind of on the more optimistic side, this is highly scalable. If we can identify, if we can keep it very simple, what the different types of actors are, keep it very loosely defined. We can also have treasury disbursements be very distributed and decentralized in this fashion. This is massively scalable, and so very hopeful that we'll get lots of great learnings out of the deployment of this section in particular. And that almost takes us all the way home. So here we've got more about Catalyst Go, just a little bit of an about section. Hey, this is me, I'm Mike, I started this. We've got the recent funded proposal, we've got other proposals up for voting, maybe have an archive, really just kind of sharing more about what is Catalyst Go. Eventually, we might have a website or something to house that information, but for right now, this is going to serve a similar purpose to what an about page on a website would do. And then finally, continue the conversation. You're trying to stay in touch with your team. Let's swap contact information, make sure we're staying in touch. Are you interested in a bounty board or getting in touch with the project? Let your facilitator know. We'll get you in, we'll get you in touch either with those partner projects or share next steps on what it actually means to take on one of those bounties off the bounty board. Catalyst Go. Maybe you want to continue to engage here. We're planning on launching a dedicated server at some point. Would love to have some collaborative social games that are actually aimed at creating outcomes. One use case might be the collaborative curation of the resources in in this onboarding experience, kind of in reference to the governance collaboratory proposal in Fund 5, that's looking at how do we actually curate resources in a collaborative way. And actually, while I'm on that, the other use case that was called out in the collaborative governance collaboratory was the compensation or tracking and compensation of contributions. And we're kind of hitting on that with the EPOC rewards. So we're not only trying to address our Fund 4 goals with this experience, but looking at what we detailed in Fund 5, just to round it out. The other Fund 5 proposal I haven't hit on yet is to grow our own DeFi teams, focusing on building up our own ecosystem rather than outreach and bringing new people in that may or may not share the vision and the values, focusing on growing our own experts. And things around the bounty boards, the team connections, the partnerships are all aimed at that end. So that's a bit about the continue the conversation with Catalyst Go, but also some other points as well. And then finally, facilitator apprenticeship. This is part of the scope of the Fund 4 proposal, is would love to bring more facilitators into this. And initially, it was intended to be very open, but I think at this point, I'm considering being a little bit more selective in how we actually roll this thing out, maybe be smaller to start and really focus on quality and value over quantity. I think something that I've learned by training digital facilitators in my own professional life, working with the Catalyst Swarm, seeing some of the great things that have come out of there, but also some of the not so great things. One personal thing for me is that I would like to really focus on the quality of facilitator, make sure that I am actually training these people. We are very much aligned and in sync to be able to have this very consistent, high quality experience, really fine tune this thing before we just release it out to the world, have it be built and modified and delivered by people who may or may not be as familiar with it. I think there will be a path there, but again, I think it's important to really focus on the quality, similar to how Cardano is being built. We didn't just throw it out to the world on day one. First it was more autocratic, moved into being kind of permissioned, federated, slowly transitioning into being permissionless. It's exactly the same track that we're imagining here. And so facilitator apprenticeship, just a plug to have people reach out, maybe do a pre-screening, do a couple of shadowing sessions and see if something like that would make sense. All this would be rewarded, going to grow their skills. And that's where we would knock this thing off. So, we would absolutely encourage people to stick around for post-session chatter if they'd like to. People got to run, want to get out of there, awesome. But that brings us to the end of the experience. And again, the main value we're hoping to deliver here is threefold. So one, we've got kind of the main value onboarding piece, and kind of like the main thrust of this. And our strategic objective that we're trying to deliver on is to reduce the onboarding time and the dropout rate. And our hypothesis is that if we can guide guests through these time-boxed onboarding experiences that have these contextually embedded resources, again, we're going to condense that wrap-up time from days to hours. And how we're going to track that is looking at sign-off from experts, so socializing this board, getting feedback from folks in the community that know their way around pretty well, have a good perspective, and also participant surveys. The how was your experience? All this feedback we collect is going to help to measure that impact. Some of the related key capabilities, so I think the design overall really speaks to this. We've got the resource curation that I mentioned, and then the facilitator toolkit. This is a very dynamic and complex experience that needs to be delivered, and so it's going to take a very dynamic, nimble, collaborative facilitator to be able to do it. And so I'll be putting together a toolkit to actually enable people to be able to take that on who may or may not have that digital facilitation experience. This is also going to have some impact on distributed decision making. So I think this might have the ability to improve proposal and voting quality. The hypothesis is that if we immerse guests in cooperative, interactive learning experiences, then we're going to create cohorts of high performing proposers and community advisors, and actually see those that participate have higher average proposal ratings, less red yellow flags on their CA assessments, and also the town hall would like to engage the town hall audience on actually what they're feeling. So this is going to take some partnership with IOG, with IdeaScale. We'd love to have some indicators to be able to track these things, and we'll absolutely need their support to be able to make that a reality. And the related key capabilities here are, again, the overall experience design, but then very important, that tracking and reporting support that I mentioned from IOG to be actually enable that tracking within the IdeaScale environment. And then finally, the DeFi and developer ecosystem. So we're trying to grow trust-based networks here. And our hypothesis that if we can connect guests through this team-based play that's hosted by world-class facilitators, they're going to be more likely to stick around and tell their friends, especially if we reward their time. So measurements here we're looking at are how many guests do we have? What's our volume? What's our growth over time? Are we actually adding new people? And then how many projects have we been able to connect with? Are people actually engaging with those partner projects, finding ways to plug into the community? Are we actually having people take on those bounties? Are we having people contribute in meaningful ways to this network, finding those ways that they can plug in? And then capabilities here with the world-class facilitation, that kind of speaks to the facilitator toolkit. We're also going to have a strong bounty board and partnerships to actually have people want to be able to engage with that. There's going to be some community management and needing to track all these things, connecting those people through the team-based play, and then treasury management. We're hitting on the rewards here. So on our, part of a hypothesis that if we reward their time, show that when they create value, we give back value. I think that's super important. And so the treasury management, the epoch rewards that we're playing around with here, some of that definition is going to be another critical piece. So I think that takes us to the end of this first little demo. Hope that was helpful. Don't know who is ever going to watch this, but yeah, thanks so much and have a good one.